Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath, editor of Forbes Women. Today, the U.S. Senate voted on the Right to Contraception bill, which would have helped codify the right to birth control into federal law. That bill was defeated on procedural grounds, and here to explain more is Harry Nelson. He's a lawyer and the founder of Nelson Hardiman. He has also written 2 books on healthcare. Harry, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Okay, so let's just start high level here. What is the Right to Contraception Act?
So, the Right to Contraception Act is a federal bill that would essentially create in federal law a guarantee of access to contraception and essentially prohibit states from taking any action that would limit access and creating rights to sue if states if they tried to limit access to contraception.
Why are we talking about contraception today? How under threat is it? We know that abortion is a state-by-state question ever since Roe v. Wade fell in 2022. But why are Senate Democrats focusing on birth control?
So the what we saw after the repeal of Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court's decision in the Dobbs case, we saw that abortion was becoming abortion was already dealt with, but contraception was coming to the fore as the next battleground. And right away, we began to see questions about whether certain contraceptions, by the way, some forms of which can be taken after the fact, for example, the medication Ella, whether those were going to be attacked because they were, interfering with this idea of life beginning at conception. And essentially, more broadly, all contraception is really an issue of reproductive health access. And so the fear that was expressed by a lot of reproductive health advocates and also experienced on the ground by doctors, by pharmacies that were involved with some of these products was immediately states were and state lawmakers and officials were reading the abortion decisions as starting to put limits on contraception. So we saw, by the way, in the FDA case over the mifepristone that there was, that advocates for using the Comstock Act, an old late 1800s law, really also goes directly to the issue of contraception. So it's another place where the issue of the government's right to protect life is and the individual's right to reproductive health control over decisions is coming to a head.
From your assessment as a lawyer, how under threat is birth control in the U.S. right now in 2024?
I think that we're still not at a point where, for all types of contraception, we have to remember we're talking about a whole variety of types of contraception, again, from classic oral contraception to medications that can be taken, after the fact in the days immediately after a potential event leading to pregnancy. We're talking about a lot of different kinds of contraception that in some of the more restrictive states, we have seen reports of pharmacies being unwilling to carry products, for example, unwilling to give out medications without confirmation that there's no fetal heartbeat. And we've seen a fear on the part of all kinds of healthcare providers, hospitals, doctors, pharmacies, around things that are, adjacent to abortion in the area of contraception. So it's not this is not a fight that is fully joined, but it is clearly, on the horizon as a sort of next up issue in this battleground.
It's interesting you say that it's not a fight that is fully joined with abortion, because I watched some of the senators make cases against this bill today. I listened to the testimony of Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Joni Ernst, and they both very quickly invoked abortion. Ted Cruz said the Democrats want abortion on demand, and it seemed to be taking something that was supposed to be talking about birth control and pulling it back into the realm of abortion. So I wanted to ask you, this bill, today's vote, was this political posturing on the part of the Democrats? Was this just a chance to engage in political theater around the issue of reproductive health? Or did this have a real chance of turning into legislation?
I think using this as a sort of reminder to crystallize in the minds of voters that there is a divide on these issues, right? So I think that the Democratic belief was that many Republican senators will object to this legislation and to this protection for exactly the reasons that you alluded to, that this issue is very much linked in voters' minds and in legislators' minds to abortion, and as part of a culture that some Republican lawmakers have really tried to attack of not treating sort of human life as a sacred thing in the kind of process around conception. And so I do think, in a sense, this was intended for a political purpose, which was to create a reminder for voters of how important it is to elect lawmakers who support reproductive health access, and just to make sure that this really is sticking and that they know where legislators stand on this issue. I do think in that sense, this is one of those issues that's part of very much with the November election in mind, to kind of try to put issues forward that voters will care about.
Now, this vote today failed 51-39. It did not clear the filibuster, but Chuck Schumer changed his vote to a no, I think, so he could bring the bill forward again. So what's next for the Right to Contraception Act?
Yeah, we're definitely going to see this issue surfacing again closer to November. And I think that, as you indicated, seeing that Majority Leader Schumer is reversing and wanting to push this issue out further is a decision about when this is going to really capture maximal attention. It's very clear that the issue since the Dobbs decision in June of 2022, we've had 2 years of many successes for Democratic candidates and in election cycles in those 2 years, where the issues around popular support for reproductive health access and greater liberalization in this area is something that voters support. So that clearly the Democratic leadership wants to time this issue right to get attention to it and make this an issue that drives things. So I think we're going to see this issue come up sometime in the next how long do we have? 5 months, so a little bit under. So it's going to be, I promise you, this will be in front of the Senate again before the summer's over.
I would think that the Republican side might want a victory here, right? Something that protects the right to birth control that they could then tout in the November elections. But that doesn't necessarily seem to be what we saw here with the vote today. Why do you think?
I think the Republican Party has to navigate between a small part of the electorate, a minority, who are in the strongly pro-life camp, for whom contraception is is an unpopular issue, and where these forms of contraception that can actually be used in the immediate aftermath to prevent a pregnancy for several days after are really actually objectionable to in the pro-life community. So meanwhile, on the other side, Republican candidates want to be able to run in the mainstream and attract a majority of voters and really portray these issues as being peripheral. So Republicans are caught a little bit on this issue, and one of the big questions certainly is going to be who succeeds in either making this a peripheral issue, which is the Republican goal, or making this a centerpiece issue that voters actually make decisions on, which is the Democrats' goal. So we've got really like this push and pull that makes Republicans not want to have this be a sort of centerpiece issue, and want voters to sort of put it to the side and vote on other issues, whether it's immigration, whether it's the economy, anything but this, because it's divisive for them.
Now, meanwhile, over in the House, it looked like there was some rumblings from House members to put a vote to a similar bill in the House. Have you been following that at all?
Yeah, I haven't seen the exact language in the House bill, but I'm just following it loosely.
So what's your prediction? Will we have legislation that protects the right to birth control in the U.S. by the end of the year or by the election?
I believe that there will be legislation on this issue that will pass. I think, obviously, we have a narrow Republican majority in the House so we're going to need some moderate Republicans to pull away. But I do believe that, given that the reproductive health issues have been really decisive in a handful of the elections that we've had in the last 2 years, I think we will see some Republicans willing to get behind, and we're not going to obviously get full Republican support for these bills, but that I believe Democrats will, that this is a winning issue for them, and that they will get support to pass this legislation sometime between now and the fall.
We've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything else you're watching here when it comes to reproductive health access in America and what our politicians are doing about it?
I think this is a reminder, that this issue is not just one of about abortion, that it covers a broader range of topics, that the issue of IVF and access to fertility treatments, access to contraception, is a part of a whole broader set of issues, including some very serious ones like access to prenatal care when women potentially have a miscarriage. Can they get adequate care? There are some real issues here. There are also some polarizing issues here, and this is just yet another sign that the repeal of Roe v. Wade has opened the door to a sort of a tug of war, if you will, that's going to keep playing out, and voters are going to have to make decisions about how important this issue is to them, and the parties are going to definitely be paying a lot of attention to that issue.
You mentioned women experiencing a miscarriage and their ability to access care. We've heard from sources saying that some women are crossing state lines to receive their care if they live in a state that has reduced reproductive health care access, that if the next door state is more favorable in terms of the laws, they're willing to travel to have their miscarriage treated. In that vein, I'm wondering, are you seeing in your practice, or just as you observe the landscape, women who are being punished for getting treated for a miscarriage, having an abortion, or even doctors who perform abortion services?
We have not seen a lot of aggressive enforcement action against women for traveling for abortion or against doctors. There's been a lot of aggressive language, and we have seen sort of when cases hit the media, we've seen some response. I certainly don't think that any state is aggressively prosecuting women for seeking treatment for a miscarriage. What's happening is something different, which is that doctors and hospitals are now nervous about whether they might be violating these fetal heartbeat laws. So we've created a lot of anxiety for healthcare providers that's resulting in women not getting access to care and making the decision to travel to another state, which is a solution for women who have money, by the way, but not for all women. This is really an issue that is very harmful to, particularly in all lower socioeconomic ranges where people don't have those same luxuries and privilege to go travel and take care of things. So what's happening is not, I would say, is not yet a kind of an aggressive punitive approach to doctors, except in an isolated set of cases, but enough language and enough talking and threatening happening by various state officials in some of these restrictive states that they have scared hospitals, scared doctors, and scared patients and motivated them to travel, which is really not good for our healthcare system and the future of medicine and healthcare in America.
It really is not. Harry Nelson, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your insight on the issue.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.